Hi guy, welcome back TV spoilers. In The Young and the Restless, everything is moving in that familiar, merciless way where no one truly wins, people simply endure. And the one who endures the most calls it strength. The triangle between Claire, Kyle, and Holden has tightened into a wire drawn so taut that even a small, ordinary truth could snap it in half. From the outside, it might look like jealousy and misunderstanding, but underneath it is a war between the hunger to be loved and the terror of being controlled. Between pride and vulnerability. Between the promise of a new beginning and a past that never received a proper burial. Claire is standing at the exact intersection of those forces, where every choice comes with consequences, and where she is beginning to understand that the most frightening question isn't what Kyle or Holden will do next, it's the fact that her own heart still refuses to let go, even when her mind has ordered her to walk away. In Genoa City these past days, the air around Claire has not only been tense because of Kyle's gaze or Holden's conditional patience, but because it feels like the town itself is waiting for her to slip. Claire has lived through enough moments where other people decided her fate, enough situations where she was pulled into someone else's power games and emotional traps, that this time she swore she would not allow anyone to put their hands on her life again. She keeps her posture steady with Holden not because she is careless, but because she is trying to prove mostly to herself that she can move forward without asking permission. Yet the harder she forces calm, the more she discovers that some parts of her refuse to obey, especially when Kyle's name rises in her mind at the exact moment she tries to avoid it, like a bruise that never has time to fade. And just as she is struggling to build a clean path toward the future, life cuts sharply in another direction with news that makes every definition of starting over feel hollow. The news arrives without spectacle, without the kind of loud drama Genoa City loves to broadcast. It comes quietly, like a knock against her ribs. Claire discovers she is pregnant. At first, it is pure shock, no joy, no panic. Only a sudden sense that the sound inside her head has turned off, leaving a cold blankness. Because pregnancy is not merely information to Claire. It becomes an instant question about ownership of her life, about freedom, about whether she is being pulled back into a spiral she cannot control. She tries to keep it private as long as she can, not out of shame, but because she needs time to understand herself. Before anyone else stamps their label onto her body and her future, she needs to know whether this is something she wants to claim, or an accident of emotion she used too quickly to run away from pain. But the worst storm does not come from the pregnancy itself. It comes when the second truth surfaces: the baby is not Holden's. The baby is Kyle's. That truth needs no judgment to become a verdict, because it collapses every story Claire has been trying to build in self-defense. If she could once tell herself she was opening a new chapter, that Holden represented her independent choice, then now the past has returned in the most undeniable form possible. A child is not a rumor. A child is not a fleeting feeling. A child is living proof that Kyle never truly left her life, even when both of them tried to convince themselves they should keep walking. Claire cannot avoid the immediate flood inside her. Confusion first, then guilt, then fear. She fears Holden because she knows what he will do, but because she does not know how she will look at him when she realizes she has turned him into a shadow in someone else's story. She fears Kyle not because he will necessarily fight for her, but because she does not know if he will use this truth as a weapon, or as a doorway back into control. And deeper than anything else, she fears herself, because she cannot escape the thought that in one moment of weakness she allowed the past to carve a permanent mark into her future, something that can lock every door whether she wants it to or not. For Kyle, the truth is not a victory either. It is not a simple reason to return. He has been trying to shut doors, to harden his heart so he will not be hurt again, convincing himself that he can save himself by leaving Claire before Claire leaves him. He has tried to make his detachment sound like principle. Everyone has the right to move on. Everyone must live with the choices they make. But when the truth of the pregnancy and the baby's father breaks into the open, every attempt Kyle has made to stand above his feelings collapses. He is no longer facing Claire alone, he is facing a part of himself he cannot deny. The baby removes his ability to pretend this was only a relationship that ended. And yet, instead of reaching for the situation as an excuse to come back, Kyle reacts in a way that deepens Claire's confusion. He insists they should continue with their lives. It is a sentence that sounds mature, even kind, but it slices like a blade. To Claire, it feels as if Kyle is trying to wipe away what has happened by force of logic. as if the baby is only a variable to be managed rather than a turning point that changes everything. She cannot tell if Kyle is saying this because he truly wants to protect her from gossip and conflict, or because he fears that if he admits what he feels, he will become vulnerable again, pulled back into the kind of love that makes him lose control. Either way, the words continue with our lives leave Claire feeling stranded at a crossroads while Kyle steps back, refusing to carry the weight with her. Claire begins living in a prolonged state of contradiction, like a room with two doors locked at once. One door is Holden standing ahead as the symbol of moving forward, the proof that she can choose a new path and refuse to be dragged backward. The other door is Kyle, a presence so deeply rooted inside her that she cannot tell what parts of her still belong to the present and what parts are trapped in memory. She tries to tell herself she can forget Kyle, that she can place her feelings where they belong and keep walking, but the harder she tries, the more Kyle appears in the smallest detail. Bits old pain, the terrifying comfort of familiarity. She realizes that the hardest thing is not love itself, but the permanence love can leave behind, the way it becomes structure inside your mind. And the pregnancy makes every attempt to let the past rest feel almost impossible. She starts asking herself a darker question: has she been using Holden as temporary shelter? Not because she despises him, not because she wants to hurt him, but because she is terrified to admit how much Kyle still affects her. Yet now that the truth is undeniable, Claire understands she cannot keep surviving by avoidance. She cannot build a future on a lie, even a lie that feels less painful in the moment. She also cannot live by hoping Kyle will simply return and everything will repair itself. If she chooses Kyle, she must accept returning to a dangerous emotional landscape, a place where she once felt tightened, doubted, and pulled away from herself. If she chooses to stay away from Kyle, she must accept raising a child who carries his imprint and seeing Kyle in her baby's face every day. There is no clean choice, only the choice she is brave enough to pay for. The central conflict inside Claire is brutal. She wants to return, and she is terrified to return. She wants the safety of what she knows, and she wants the freedom of what she does not. She wants Kyle to understand that she cannot erase him. Yet she also wants to prove she does not need him to survive. And in that tangled space, the question that keeps repeating becomes unbearable: will she ignore every complication and go back to Kyle? It is no longer simply romance, it is a test of will. Because going back is not just loving again, it means facing old wounds, absorbing the judgment of others, accepting the consequences of a past that never truly ended. Kyle, on the other side, is not as calm as he looks. He insists on moving forward. But underneath that insistence, a private fear grows. If he truly moves forward, he may lose Claire forever. If he turns back, he must admit that his detachment was only armor. He tells her they should continue their lives, but he cannot say how much it hurts to say it. He cannot admit he fears becoming the reason Claire feels trapped, that he fears the baby will become a chain for them both. And he cannot confess that in the deepest corner of him, he still wants Claire, as simply does not know how to hold on without becoming controlling. The harder Kyle tries to keep things right, the more pressure builds. Claire can feel it, and it makes her angry and fragile at the same time. She is angry because Kyle still has the ability to turn emotion into cold sentences. She is fragile because she understands that coldness is how Kyle saves himself. She sees that they share one dangerous similarity: both of them fear pain, and both of them use harsh decisions to hide their softness. The difference is that now Claire carries a truth she cannot conceal for long, and the price of silence increases with every passing day. Claire begins to see everything like a countdown clock. She cannot keep the secret forever. She cannot postpone the confrontation with Holden. She cannot remain suspended with Kyle. The cruelty is that she is not deciding only for herself anymore. Ash is deciding for a life that has not even been born. Every time she imagines speaking, she sees a chain of consequences: trust collapsing, jealousy rising, silent confrontations igniting the town's judgment, and the possibility that she could lose both men to the same truth. But the longer she waits, the clearer she becomes. Silence is its own betrayal, not only of Holden or Kyle, but of herself. And so the story reaches its most dangerous point, where one small decision can reshape everything. Claire stands at the edge. Either she keeps the promise she made to herself that no one will control her again, meaning she must tell the truth and accept the fallout, or she chooses temporary peace by staying silent longer, turning the situation into a delayed explosion. She knows she cannot hide forever, but she also knows that speaking will shake her life like an earthquake. And just as she thinks she is ready to choose the harder road, another fear rises sharper than anything else. If she tells the truth and says the baby is Kyle's, will Kyle truly continue his life the way he claims, or will he return in a way that makes Claire realize he never planned to let go at all? that he only stepped back to set up a move that leaves her with no way out. Holden may hold Claire's attention for a while, long enough even for her to mistake the distraction for a new beginning. But the deeper she moves into her own emotions, the clearer it becomes that what she has with Kyle is not comparable to anything else. It isn't just love. It is history, habit, unfinished wounds, and promises that turned into burdens before either of them had the strength to keep them. In Genoa City, people like to say that all it takes is a third person for a relationship to collapse. But for Claire, the collapse doesn't begin with Holden. It begins with the truth that she never truly escaped Kyle. Holden is only a detour, a place to hide from the rain that she convinces herself is a home until the smallest signs inside her start ringing like alarms. Claire has spent too long learning how to trust her own instincts, too long fighting for the right to write her own life instead of letting others draft the script. So when unease finally rises, it is no longer a vague fear. It is survival forcing her to stare straight into the truth, even if that truth burns down everything she has tried to rebuild. At first, Holden comes into Claire's world wearing the face of someone who understands her, careful enough not to push, patient enough to make her lower her guard. His attention feels like a coat placed over her shoulders at the exact moment the air turns cold. And for a brief stretch of time, it allows Claire to forget the hollow space Kyle left behind. She isn't naive enough to believe that every gentle gesture is unconditional. But she is exhausted by long emotional wars, and a part of her wants permission to breathe, to test what life might look like without constant conflict, without slammed doors, without the kind of cold stare that makes her doubt her own worth. Yet the closer she gets to Holden, the more she feels their connection remains surface level. It has attraction, novelty, and a temporary sense of relief. But it lacks the depth she once had with Kyle, kind of bond, where you understand each other without trying, even when that understanding is also what hurts. Holden can make her feel something in the moment, but Kyle once altered the shape of her life. Holden can help her forget for a few minutes, but Kyle makes her remember in the moment she most wants to stop remembering. Then the name Audra slips into Claire's line of sight in a way that cannot be dismissed. It isn't harmless gossip or a casual remark, it is a fragment of truth with a cold metallic edge. As if someone has accidentally dropped the key to a locked room. Claire doesn't need the entire story to sense that a buried connection exists between Holden and Audra, something old, something half-hidden, something now pushing back to the surface. And when a past relationship resurfaces at the exact moment Holden is positioning himself inside her life, Claire's mind goes straight to motive. Motive is always the most dangerous thing in Genoa City because it turns kindness into a tool, tenderness into strategy, and every reassuring touch into a hook that drags you somewhere you never intended to go. Claire has been led too many times, used too many times, so she cannot ignore the feeling that Holden is concealing part of himself, and that what he is hiding isn't harmless. At first, Claire tries to convince herself that everyone has a past, that everyone has shadows they don't want to explain. She tells herself her suspicion could be nothing more than old wounds making her overreact. But the more pieces she hears about Audra, the more she watches Holden's subtle shifts whenever that name appears, the more she senses something precise and deliberate. He isn't merely keeping a secret, he is shaping the narrative. The places where Holden dodges are not normal awkwardness, they are carefully arranged gaps. His answers are not blatant lies, but half-truths designed to soothe her just enough to keep her from pressing harder while still guiding her across a bridge where he controls the pace. And being guided like that makes Claire furious, because it pulls her back into the version of herself who didn't get to choose. She refuses to live like that again. Suspicion turns into action. Claire doesn't investigate out of impulsive revenge. She moves the way someone moves when they are trying to save themselves from repeating a pattern. Quietly, she watches. Quietly, she connects details. Quietly, she searches for proof small enough to slip through the cracks and still speak loudly. She needs to answer the question that keeps tightening in her chest. Did Holden come to her because of who she is or because of what she represents? Because Claire is not only Claire. She is a numinous entrance to a powerful family the outside world constantly wants access to. A symbol of influence, protection, privilege, and secrets. If Holden is using her as a key, Claire will not allow herself to become one. She begins digging into the history between Holden and Audra, and the deeper she goes, the more she understands it isn't a simple romantic thread. There are signs of shady dealings, the kind of gray area transactions that stain everything they touch. What frightens her is that the truth doesn't appear as one complete picture, but as smudges on a white glove. One smudge is enough to know the hand has been in something dirty. When Claire realizes Holden has had questionable transactions tied to Audra in the past, what rises inside her is not jealousy or annoyance. It is the collapse of trust before it fully forms. It feels like stepping onto a stage where the set is already built, the lights already aimed, and she is the only performer who never received the script. Claire begins replaying every conversation, every considerate gesture, every moment where Holden seemed to get her, and suddenly she sees the outline of calculation. If Holden has a history of deals with Audra that were never clean, then his appearance in Claire's life may not be coincidence at all. It may be a strategy to enter the Newman orbit, to become accepted, to stand close enough to hear conversations that outsiders are never meant to hear. And if that is true, then Claire hasn't just been misled romantically, she has been used as a ladder. From suspicion to conclusion, there is only one step left. Claire digs deeper and sees a pattern. Holden doesn't just want Claire. He wants what sits behind her. He wants a position close enough to the Newman family to gain influence, cover, and access. She doesn't arrive at this through a single dramatic discovery, but by the way the pieces lock together, the timing of Holden's appearances, always arriving at just the right moment to feel fated. The questions he asks that sound caring but function like probes. The carefully measured distance he keeps so that Claire is the one who pulls him closer. He never forces. The most skilled manipulators never do. They make you volunteer. And that realization chills Claire because it means she opened the door herself. But then she senses something even darker. Claire starts to understand that Holden isn't only hiding the truth about Audra. He is hiding something larger, a secret from the past that could affect Audra and the Newmans alike. The word affect is what makes Claire unable to stop. If a secret is big enough to threaten a family like the Newmans, then Holden is no longer just an emotional complication. He is a risk. And in Genoa City, risk never stays contained. It spreads. It attaches itself to power so it can survive. It turns love into leverage and trust into a hostage. Claire refuses to let that happen, not only for her own sake, but because the price in this town is never paid by one person alone. The betrayal Claire feels is so deep she can almost hear her own breathing change. Whenever she thinks of Holden, she doesn't want to explode in public, doesn't want to become the woman everyone labels overreactive, doesn't want to be pushed into a story where she is blamed for the mess. But she also knows silence is its own form of complicity. And Claire hates nothing more than being pressured into silence for the sake of image. So she chooses the most dangerous approach. She gathers information quietly, builds her plan carefully, and prepares to expose Holden at the right moment when the evidence is strong enough that he cannot twist it into a misunderstanding. She isn't doing it only for revenge. She is doing it to reclaim control over her own story. She is doing it to prove she is not prey. She is doing it so that Kyle, Holden, and all of Genoa City understand she can stand upright on her own. In the middle of this, Claire cannot escape another truth. The more suspicious Holden becomes, the more Kyle begins to feel real again, real in a way that sometimes hurts, but real nonetheless. Kyle can be cold. He can be decisive. He can make her feel abandoned. But he is not an outsider wearing a mask of charm to enter the Newman world. Kyle belongs to that world. He is part of the system Claire understands, even when that very system can crush people. And this comparison tangles Claire further. She hates that her heart keeps drifting back toward Kyle, while her mind is battling Holden. She hates that her past still has the power to ignite her feelings. Yet that hatred only proves the point. Kyle remains the deepest bond she has ever had. Something Holden cannot replace with a few weeks of careful attention and perfectly timed gentleness. When Claire finally believes she has enough to keep Holden from twisting her doubts into doubt about herself, she chooses to confront him. Not to beg for explanations, but to draw a boundary. She enters the confrontation with a calm so tense it feels like wire, because she knows one crack is all Holden needs to rewrite the moment into confusion and pull her back under his influence. Claire accuses him of deception, not with wild emotion, but with a cold certainty that leaves little room for denial. She warns him the truth will come into the light. In that moment, Claire isn't looking at Holden as a man she almost trusted. She is looking at him as someone standing at the Newman family's front door with a bag full of secrets, and she is the only one trying to stop that bag from spilling. The ripple reaches the Newman family exactly the way Claire expects. When danger appears near them, the Newmans do not treat it as personal drama. Everything can become leverage, everything can become an attack. Holden, no matter how trustworthy he tried to seem, starts to fall under scrutiny. And among the Newmans, Victor is always the most wary of outsiders. Victor does not need perfect proof to become suspicious. He needs only the feeling that someone is approaching his family for reasons that aren't clean. Once Claire makes it clear she is sitting on information that can't be ignored, the attention on Holden shifts from curiosity to the gaze of an empire that has crushed men for far less. Holden may be skilled at manipulating feelings, But Victor's suspicion is a different battlefield zone where every mistake costs reputation, access, and survival. Claire understands that and she refuses to retreat under the weight of pressure. She goes public with the evidence, creating a scandal in the truest sense, not only damaging Holden's standing, but forcing everyone to reconsider his entire presence in Genoa City. Holden's credibility takes a direct hit, because once people believe he used Claire as a path into the Newmans, every past gesture becomes suspect. Claire knows public exposure is a blade with two edges. It can cut her too. It can invite gossip that she acted out of jealousy, that she still wants Kyle, that she is reckless. But Claire accepts it. She would rather be judged than be used. She would rather detonate a scandal than allow a silent scandal to grow into something that devours her and her family. And then, as the aftershocks begin to spread through Genoa City, Claire stands amid the wreckage of trust and asks herself the cruelest question. Did she just free herself from a man who exploited her? Or did she just open the door for an even larger secret to pour out? Because if Holden truly has a past powerful enough to affect Audra and the Newmans, then today's scandal may only be the paint peeling while the wall underneath is cracking in a far more dangerous way. Claire looks at what she revealed, looks at what she still holds back. And for the first time she feels a heavy certainty settle in her bones. The evidence she used to bring Holden down might be only the part that was allowed to surface, while the real thread, one that could pull the entire Newman empire into a storm, may still be waiting in the shadows she hasn't reached yet. And just when Claire thinks she has seized control of the story, a silent warning presses in on her like cold air. This fight is not over. Because what Holden is hiding may not only be his secret type, may be the kind of secret that forces Victor to strike first before everything is exposed. And the only question left is where Claire will stand when Victor begins his counterattack. On our TV Spoilers channel, I'm always looking for content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.